We were shocked by the number of victims, the estimated number of people who were under the rubble was big number. After an hour, we recognized that this disaster, this natural disaster, is beyond our capacity. So we called the world to help us from the very beginning.
There are many stories of hope that quickly turned into tragedy. Like in the case of Anwar, who was still breathing more than 40 hours after the initial earthquake.
وقت سمعنا صوت روح كنا كثير يعني عم نسحب الجثث ميتين مزعوجين ومقهورين يعني قضاء الله وقدر. بس وقت سمعنا صوت طفل انه في صوت الصاروخ عايشين يعني ما بتوقع الفرحه اللي صارت في قلوبنا انا والشباب اللي عم يساعدونا وابوه كان واقف برا. صلي على النبي يا حبيبي صلي على النبي.
It took hours of painstaking work to make their way through to rescue her. The 9-year-old was finally removed. But she died on her way to hospital.
أكثر شغلة أثرت فيني أنوار وقت كانت خايفة كثير وعم تبكي يعني شوي تبكي شوي أنا هديها. بس أكثر شغلة وقت مدت إيدها ومسكت الإيد عصت لي على إيدي قال لي يا عم مشان الله لا تكبس علي السقف وأنا هون يعني لا تتركوني خلوني يعني طالعوني.
With their bare hands and without thermal imaging cameras to locate people, rescuers say they saved 2,000 people trapped in the debris. But they believe they could have saved many more.
We asked for help, but the world didn't respond to us. We don't know why. We all know what we know, that the United Nations has the power to open the gates, has the power to call on the international rescue teams to come to us, to help us in this difficult time. But no one responded to us. No one helped us.
The search for the living was called off on day 5 in northwest Syria, at a time when missing survivors were still being found in neighboring Turkey. Those who responded to the human tragedy say the world failed the people in the opposition-controlled enclave, and it wasn't only a failure to send rescue teams. There were delays in getting emergency aid in, and the humanitarian crisis already existed in Syria before the earthquakes worsened it. The northwest enclave is largely isolated from the world. There's no way out for these people. This is a country still at war, with 90% living in poverty.
الزلزال 4 أيام العوائل قاعدة بالطرقات العوائل قاعدة بالحدائق البرد يعني اللي نفد من الزلزال حيموت كمان بالبرد.
The United Nations blamed the delay on damage caused to roads, but the head of relief operations, Martin Griffiths, acknowledged failing the people of Syria. In his words, they rightly feel abandoned, looking for international help that hasn't arrived.
That the United Nations seems to look at Bashar al-Assad as their Secretary General. They're waiting for him to give them the okay. 9 days into a major earthquake. I don't know in the history of the United Nations that they had not responded to something. It's the hardest hit area in Syria. With all due respect to anyone that's been hurt, including in regime-held areas, which deserved aid, nothing has come in here. Planes are landing in Damascus en masse. The regime is known for looting and stealing the aid, and at the same time doesn't allow cross-line aid, and he waited. He waited until no one could be rescued in order to say, okay, maybe 3 months on an extra border crossing. It is a shame on the legacy of the United Nations.
It's not the first time opponents of the Syrian government have felt abandoned by the world. Teacher-turned-activist Abdul Kafi Alhamdo says the world's inaction in the aftermath of the earthquake has happened before.
Papaya!
Alhamdo is remembered for his cries of desperation that appeared on social media when Syrian government forces and their allies were closing in on the opposition-controlled sector of Aleppo. In late 2016, the city fell and thousands were forced to leave.
العالم كله عم يشوفنا عم نموت تحت قصف دمار تحت الرعب الجوع والعالم كله كان ساكت. الأمم المتحدة اللي هي كانت لازم تتحرك بوقتها تركتنا 4 أشهر تحت الحصار عم نعاني كل أنواع القهر والألم والظلم والقتل والتأجير كلنا بحلب كل يوم أنت رح لازم ما بتعرف إنه أنت تعيش اليوم اللي بعده. نفس الشيء صار هون. نحن لما كنا عم ننتظر بس الأمم المتحدة تتدخل وتساعد الناس بعد الزلزال مشان نعطيهم أمل بالحياة، والأمم المتحدة تقطع هذا الأمل حقيقة هي زادت كمية القتل كمية الدمار. الأمم المتحدة ممكن تلاقي 100 تبرير لكن ما ممكن حدا يعرف ويعيش لحظات هدول الناس اللي قضوها تحت الزلزال بس لأنه ما عندنا شيء يساعدهم، ما عندنا شيء نطالعهم من تحت الأنقاض. مين أي حدا بالمجتمع الدولي ممكن يساعدني أنسى أصواتهم اللي عندي؟ مين؟ الأمم المتحدة خلي بتقدر تساعد هدول الأطفال اللي فقدوا أهاليهم أو الأهالي اللي فقدوا أبنائهم تساعدوهم ينسوا؟
When day broke, the full extent of the tragedy started to unfold, with a second earthquake hitting just hours later, leading to further collapses. Buildings here are not resistant to shaking. Many were built without adequate construction standards and weakened by years of bombing. For many, this is not the first time they have been displaced. Idlib province and surrounding areas are the opposition's last stronghold. They're surrounded by regime forces and Turkey. Those who rebelled against the regime and civilians too scared to live under its rule were bussed here, as the armed forces clawed back territory lost in the early stages of the conflict. Many were already broken, like Abu Muhammad, who is bringing the lives of his family members back to some level of normalcy before the natural disaster struck.
أنا صعوبة بقذيفي من الحرب اللي كانت دايرة عنا في سوريا، وكانت الصعوبة علي كبيرة جدا. يعني أنا صعوبة وشليت شلل نصفي، كانت صعوبة علي بالتنقل بنزوحنا، بتنقل عائلتي من مكان لمكان. يعني نقلنا لكذا مكان لحتى صرنا بالأخير نستقر في مكاننا هو منطقة حارب. يعني الصعوبة كانت الحرب جدا جدا قاسية على الشعب السوري وعلينا وعلى الكل. يعني صعوبتي كمان انه اليوم عاطل عن العمل، ماني قدران اقدم شيء لعيالي. حصل هذا الزلزال يعني وهذا الوضع اللي احنا اللي فيه قاعدين. يعني بده الواحد يتحمم، بده الواحد يبدل جو. يعني اليوم ما في نحن نتحمم بضمن خيمة، لأن في معنا كذا عائلي.
The injured survivors are also struggling. There are more than 10,000 across Syria. The majority, at least 8,000, are here in the opposition-controlled northwest, where health facilities are already under strain due to 12 years of war. Hospitals were overwhelmed.
Giving the medical care, appropriate medical care for such patients is something which is complicated because you need everything, and the problem is you don't have anything. In some hospitals, there were shortage in gold. They could not find gold to give to put on the wounds for their patients. I hope that donations will come to the area.
Many victims suffer from crush injuries, which could lead to kidney failure. That's why there is a demand for dialysis machines.
بعد 7 ساعات طلعوني من تحت الأنقاض، حسيت حالي بالمشفى، وهلا وضعي حرج كتير، تعبان، اجري مهروسي، عندي غسيل كلي، والغسيل ما بتغفر على طول.
It's not his only pain. His greatest loss is his wife and 3 children, who all died in the ruins of their home. The death toll across Syria was nearly 6,000 people, 4,400 of them in the northwest. There wasn't enough room in cemeteries, and mass graves had to be dug. The scale of the catastrophe meant volunteers were needed, since heavy machinery were being used for search and rescue operations. And amidst the chaos, there was also the challenge of identifying victims.
ما كنا نتعرف على الضحايا كثير ابدا، طبعا في ناس نحن تعرفنا على وجوهها من شكلها، في ناس تعرفت عليها عائلتها، وفي ناس ما ممكن تتعرف عليها ابدا ابدا بسبب انه هذا الشيء كان مهشم او فيه او يعني ما موجود عندك او ولا شيء معلم موجود ابدا. طبعا نحن في عندنا عده عالم اندفنت مجهولي الهويه، ونحن كنا نصور مثلا الجثه ونبعثها على المجموعه، فيما بعد كانت الناس انه تجي تتعرف، ما فيك توصف هيك شعور ابدا ابدا ابدا، لان هو شعور كثير كثير قاسي، انت عم تدفن عائله وليس عم تدفن شخص او شيء، انت ماسك طفل في ايديك، الطفل هذا دفنانه كان اصعب اللحظات اللي بتعيشها. البكي في القلب، البكي بالدموع، البكي ولا اي شيء فيك توصفه ابدا، لان انت عم تمسك طفل، عم تمسك طفله، عم تمسك الزوجه والاولاد والاب، كل العائله كلها كانت هولة.
Syrians were also among the dead in neighboring Turkey. Their bodies were brought back home for burial. Nearly 2 million of the 4 million refugees there were living in provinces that were hit by the quakes. Among them was Abdul Qadir. His family waited for 10 days before his body was found.
Basahin mo, yan ang diary ko.
It's good to know that ABS-CBN knows I'm sick.
At sa magiging pagtanggap ng misis mo, parang may tagintig pa rin ng pananap. Come at least spiritually into my heart.
Siguro si Gera.
Siguradong kasing cold to.
Nagawa nila ang kanilang makakaya para masagip ang mga nakaligtas.
Hintay-hintay lang tayo. Aking din ang 119.
Cover po. Please try to grab it channel to shop for all.
Susan, kapit kay Papa ha.